Hey, this is Jack Downs with a little run through of the things that you missed in class Thursday. Please see the note in the email about how class is required, and you need to get in touch with me if you can't be there, ideally in advance, and so on. Also, so yes, let's look at the schedule briefly and say this was an important class, as they probably all are to some degree, but there was a bunch of handouts. You'll see like 6 or more things attached to the email you're receiving. You really need to review them all, as we did in class. So we looked at what was going to be due and so on. The advisor interview was due. Please get it in as soon as you can. You should be working on your entomology name presentation, right? Actually, what you missed in class was a demo of one, but just remember you have an organized introduction with attention-getting devices that then moves on to your build to the topic, which is your name. You do a signposted preview statement. You have 3 main ideas. The first one should have sources, 2 verbalized sources from the research you did. So you literally say, according to behindthename.com, in an article updated in 2020, the name Jack means ba-da-ba-da-ba-da. You verbalize the source, and it'd be nice to have 2 of them there. Remember your second main idea, which involves an interview probably with a family member. You actually are going to verbalize that source. Who do you talk to and what they said? And then your third main idea will not have sources. It's your own reflection. And then remember, you have to have an organized, discrete, distinct conclusion too. One of the other things that's different is that you're going to use index cards. Now, I reminded everybody and showed everybody and reviewed briefly in this old handout, which you received one of the first days, maybe the first day, I don't remember, was at the very end of it was, let's scroll down, how we use cards. Okay, so, and by the way, I handed out a lot more index cards, and you can pick up some if you would like in 114 in our room there, beside that bin where all the collage material was. So please review these tips, and actually requirements, I would say, more than tips. You don't write your entire speech in the cards, it's only an outline. You use the actual cards I gave you, white index cards, you only write on one side. I suggest you hold them vertically. You hold them, you number the cards in case you drop them or mix them up or something, so you can keep them in order or reorder them, right? You will probably have no more than about 5 index cards. You might, if you're making you have a lot of sources and other information you want to note as bullet points. I suppose you could have 6 or something, but you may have less than 5. Your introduction will require, I would say, no more than 1 card, and probably less than 1 card. Each of your main ideas might require a card. Your conclusion might require a card. Fewer cards are better. You don't hold them with both hands. Of course, you have to switch cards, but then you keep the cards in one hand so your hands can do their job. Your card should follow the structure I gave you in the handout originally about this presentation. Avoid too many complete sentences on the cards. You certainly do not write out your speech. However, you could write your introductory sentence the way you want to start off, so you get those words the way you want to say them the right way, which of course would probably be one of your 2 attention-getting devices. If you have a quotation from someone, maybe from the personal interview, you would write that out. Your clincher, you might write that out. Your sources, you're going to write them out. But most things won't be lots of words. They'll just be bullet points. Imagine an outline. So yes, your main idea, let's say your first main idea, which is the meaning of your name, the history of your name, research you did into your name. It might have underneath it, 5, 6, 7 bullet points of each of the sub-ideas that you want to get to. You give yourself cues for delivery, like smile or pause. You can underline things. You can use markers for color on things to make them stand out for you. You make your cards helpful, and you make sure your cards are prepared, actually not just in advance of the class. You make sure your cards are prepared before, as you do your practice with a TA. So speaking of practice with a TA, I'm going to bring that up. Speech coaching sessions. This is another handout you have. We have coaching sessions this week, Tuesday and Wednesday, as usual. So please get your presentation together so you can do it there. What else did we do? I looked at the schedule again and said that you have to, what is due next class? Well, study guide 1 is due next class. I handed out study guide 2. I'm not going to send that to you in email. Please get it to me, from me in class. You have to come and ask me for it next class. I'm asking you to start the reading for the next study guide 2, chapter 8. Study guide 2 is assigned. Yes, I already assigned it this class. You need to work on your presentation, yes, and something called a specific purpose statement exercise, which I'll go over in a minute. You'll also notice, whoops, that next class we have a guest speaker, Tim Spofford. I gave everyone a handout on that, and I will attach it in your email also, so you can know a little bit more about him. He will be there for most of the class, but we'll try to get a bit more content in also. If nothing else, I'll pick up your study guides. Tim Spofford, where did I have him? Here he is. This is the handout I'm going to give you. And by the way, he also has a presentation you could go to watch him there. So please look at the handout which is attached. So you have a little bit of background on him, and you can do a little research if you want in advance, so you know what he's talking about, this doll test. A really fascinating work he did. He's a journalist. He's a graduate of SUNY Plattsburgh from quite some time ago, and he's taught journalism. He's done journalism at lots of places, and he's written a number of books. He has a new book that's out, and most of his work is about race and about other kinds of conflict. For instance, he started writing about Kent. He was inspired by, it says here, Kent State, Jackson State shootings in 1970, and all the many different racial justice movements, and made his life's work writing about and study about and of race. Okay, so what else we're going to say? I'm going to go on to the SPS stuff. If you remember, last class you had a handout about structuring information. We talked about all the how we choose a general purpose. We will be focusing on to inform. The general purpose is to inform. How we worked out a specific purpose. In the specific purpose statement, and also what makes a good one. We looked at how it has to be specific, and I gave you in your handout also the things we look at to analyze it. Is it specific enough? Does it have the correct purpose, and only one purpose? And more detail about purpose, that's in the handout. And then, is it truly a statement? Is it a full idea? And other things about determining if it's a proper statement. That's in your handout too, right? So we have the SPS, the specific purpose statement. Now we can take that SPS, and then of course from it comes the central thesis, which says how you resolve the SPS, and the central thesis contains all the main ideas, which you can write out separately too. So the important handout I gave is this one, which says, okay, now we can take the SPS, and we could say, is it an object? SPS, that's something. Is it about something that can be seen, a person, place, or a thing, right? Is it a process? It's about something that has multiple steps, explains how something happens. Is it an event? Events can be a little tricky. Some are obvious, like it's a concert or a celebration or a parade or something. Those are events. An event could also be a war, or it could be something that might happen in the future. There's some things that have a past, present, and future. They usually are the result of a series of actions. They could have a cause, but they might not, if it's just an annual event sort of thing. A war might have a cause. A famine, which might be an event, might have a cause. So you could do your presentation on that, and that would be an event presentation. Event SPS for your presentation. Or is it a concept? We can remember these with the initials COPE. Concept, object, process, event. It spells COPE, C-O-P-E. So you remember them that way. So that's how we designate the type of your SPS, of your specific purpose statement. Your central thesis, though, has an organizational pattern, how the information in it is organized. So your central thesis could fall into one of these 4 organizational patterns. Okay? Is it topical? That means it's just stuff is divided up into chunks, and they aren't related to each other in time, or one thing causing another, or space. Right? It's just balanced amounts of information, and that's very common. In fact, object topical is probably the most common, both type of SPS and then organizational pattern of your central thesis. You could say, by the way, these organizational patterns are of your main ideas, which is essentially what your central thesis is, right? Is it chronological? In other words, are the things organized in time? Is it causal? These are linking patterns we make from one to another, the cause and effect relationships. One of these main ideas causes the next thing, right? Is it spatial? Things are arranged in space. So I gave examples of these and wrote some out, and I don't have those to do for you right now. And by the way, do notice that certain types of SPSs can only have certain types of organizational patterns. This is all of in our attempt to further organize information, name information, structure information, to determine, are we doing what we're planning? And also determine, for instance, is it a problem solution, problem cause solution, comparative advantage? These address problems or compare things which are actions. And those we do not use, because those are not informative. Those are persuasive structures. Okay, let me give you show you another handout that you have, which is some samples. So, and these have them attached, and I did not do these the names attached in here. I gave this as a handout later as examples, but you can also see that to inform my audience about the 4 steps to dye your shoes is a process, right? The 4 steps of doing something. Yes, and then we have the main ideas, which are in the central thesis, which are the 4 steps to dye your shoes, are preparing the shoes, mixing the fabric dyes, applying the fabric dyes, setting the color. Those things happen in order, so it's chronological. So this would be a process, chronological, SPS, and central thesis. Then we could write out the main ideas like this, and notice how we use exactly the same kind of language. It looks a little boring, but, and of course, when you develop your true speaking index, you use different language, but this is the beginning of the structure of that outline that would then go into a set of cards. And these main ideas, each one is going to have lots of sub bullet items or sub steps. So that's where your real information and research would have happened. And speaking of research, these are 2 sources that you might use for that presentation. So this is how the general setup of the original organization of a presentation would really go, a true informative presentation. Look at this next one. Okay, so yes, the general purpose still is to inform. For all these it should be, and for what you're going to do it should be also. To inform my audience about the 4 activities at the Coachella Music Festival. By the way, these first 2 are from Tamiya, RTA, in an assignment similar to what you're going to do. You have to create 4 of these. Notice that this is an event. Well, it's pretty obvious it's an event. It's a music festival. That's an event. It's a thing that happened. It has a past, a present, a future. I mean, a before and after in a certain time that it happened, right? 4 activities of the Coachella Music Festival are lineups of performances, art exhibits, sponsor tents, and fireworks. These are not things that happen in order. They're just different parts of it. They're not arranged in space either, right? Like, for instance, if I did a presentation on the Statue of Liberty, the parts of the Statue of Liberty, the 5 parts of the Statue of Liberty, and that would be my SPS, to inform my audience about. Well, those things I would say, you know, there's the crown, there's the torch, there's the feet, there's the whatever. They're arranged in space. That would be spatial organization, right? So if something's arranged in space, maybe it's parts of a park, for instance, arranged in space. I think we'll get to one of those in just a minute. So do notice how this is set up. You have this handout. How about to inform my audience about parts of New York City Central Park? Yes, a park is an object. This may be a little hard to get, but objects could be a thing like, here, I'll use my My salmon, I did not do my salmon example. So if I said to inform my audience about the 5 stages in the life cycle of an Atlantic salmon, what would that be? And the 5 stages are, I would list the stages. The first stage is the aerial, the second stage is, and so on. I mean, I name the stages, right? And that would be the main ideas, and they would have worked into the central thesis. Okay, think about that. Salmon and the life cycle. Well, the salmon itself is an object, okay? So that would be an object presentation, it's SPS, but it's arranged in chronological order, right? The stages of it. So that would be object chronological. This one is object spatial because it's parts of the park and they're arranged in space like on a map. Okay, good. How about for my audience about the 4 main principles that work in evolution? Okay, if we're talking about evolution like that, we're talking about like a concept, not a process. We're trying to understand evolution, right? And we're talking about the 4 main principles of it. They are variation, inheritance, selection, and time. Okay, so those are just like topics. We arrange them topically. I didn't write topic there. It is topical. Right to end. Number 2. And then you can see how the rest of it's arranged. Whoops. There. Okay. All right. So that handout heads you towards, and that discussion, which you should spend some time and read those handouts over, and maybe speak with me or the TAs if you have any questions, because I've gone over this quickly, allowed students to do what I hope you will do is a practice set. Here I gave them 6 SPSs which have problems. I wanted everyone to identify the problem, rewrite it in a way that solve the problem. You have to use your imagination somewhat, and then also write the central thesis that would go with your new improved SPS, right? And then say for your new improved SPS, what is the type and what is the organizational pattern. So I'm not going to give you the answers for these. Also, I'm not going to pick this up, but I do think you could go over this with me or a TA. I think filling this out and practicing with it would be a good idea because it will help you in the actual assignment, which is, okay, this is due like in a week and a half, or a little less now. What I need you to do is I need you to write 4 SPSs. 1 object, 1 process, 1 event, 1 concept. In the same way that there are 4 in this sample sheet I gave you, right? And you're going to write them in the same structure. You're going to put your name on it, of course, yeah. But then you're going to write the general purpose, which is to inform, of course. The SPS, the specific purpose statement, and then you're going to label it. The central thesis. How are you going to come up with these main ideas, though? Well, you're going to have a couple of sources. You're going to have to do a little bit of research on this. Of course, they're going to be your own topics, your own central thesis and main ideas developed from a source. You're going to list the sources in a way that seems that using academic citation, actually APA citation, and the assignment explains in the book where to find that. And no, do you have to have truly used these sources thoroughly? No, they're just sources that would make sense here and from which you were able to put together some main ideas, which of course determines your central thesis. So you're going to do in the same way there's 4 here, 1 of each SPS type. You're going to do 4, 1 of each SPS type on your own for this exercise. You're going to write them out as explained here. Remember your central thesis and main ideas are brief. They're just the main ideas have to be complete sentences, but they're really built from the central thesis. Your SPS has to fulfill all the criteria of an SPS, and then you have to give at least 2 sources. We talk about these as helping with the need to know idea and information, informative speaking. So we want to create a need to know. Our sources have to energize and make us enthusiastic about the information. We use the APA citation method, which you do your best, right? If you get something from Wikipedia, you can do that. It's okay to do. And it is a little odd trying to cite it. You just do your best to use the citation method shown. And you can see in your textbook on page 130, and this figure, you can find how you would cite different things, magazine articles, websites, books, and so on, how you do that. So I'm gonna understand that they're not gonna be perfectly APA because that's tough with some of these type of things, but I really want you to do your best. And again, see the samples here, which I think people just did their best at these. So that's what's due. All right, so I've gone through that handout, that handout, that handout, that handout, and that handout. So that was a lot of stuff. And of course, we did it in more detail in class too. But please do your best to stay on track. And if nothing else, please pull your presentation together and get ready to practice so you can be ready to give it next week. See you then. Let me know if there's any questions or problems.